And I still, you know, with the greatest respect to those guys, I don't think they knew who he was. That he makes this profound music. And then I heard this one track by him called Traveling Alone, which is the first track on the album that I thought was like nothing else he'd ever done.
Eric Clapton, known to many as Slow Hand, stands as one of the most influential blues guitarists in rock history. His technical mastery and emotional depth transformed the genre and inspired countless musicians. However, behind the legendary status and smooth blues melodies existed a complex personality marked by competitive tensions and difficult relationships with fellow musicians. Throughout his decades-long career, Clapton's interactions with other artists were not always harmonious, and various sources have suggested that he engaged in several notable conflicts and rivalries that shaped his journey through the music world. The story of these conflicts begins with understanding Clapton's position in rock history. He emerged during the British blues explosion of the 1960s and quickly earned recognition for his exceptional guitar skills. The nickname Slow Hand came from Giorgio Gamelski, the manager of the Yardbirds, an early band where Clapton made his mark. As his reputation grew, so did the pressures and dynamics that would characterize his relationships with other musicians. During this era, the music scene was dominated by major acts like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and competition for recognition was fierce among artists seeking to establish their own identities. One of the most tumultuous relationships in Clapton's career developed with Ginger Baker, his bandmate in the legendary power trio Cream. When Cream formed in 1966, it brought together three exceptionally talented musicians, but the chemistry that made their music revolutionary also created personal friction. According to various accounts, the tension between Clapton and Baker started almost immediately. Their first rehearsal at Baker's house in Neasden reportedly featured an argument between the two musicians, foreshadowing years of conflict to come. Baker was known throughout the industry for his volatile temperament and explosive personality, while Clapton possessed his own strong ego and artistic vision. These traits clashed repeatedly during their time together. Industry insiders have suggested that Clapton found Baker's personality extremely difficult to work with, despite acknowledging his drumming brilliance. Recording sessions allegedly became contentious affairs, with disagreements erupting frequently. The situation deteriorated during Cream's final tour, with reports of backstage confrontations before performances. Some accounts suggest these conflicts even became physical at times. The intensity of their mutual dislike ultimately contributed to Cream's breakup, despite the band's enormous commercial success and critical acclaim. According to sources, Clapton later described his experience working with Baker as one of the worst periods of his career, and he supposedly declined numerous reunion offers specifically because they would require working with Baker again. The difficulties within Cream extended beyond Baker to include Jack Bruce, the band's bassist and primary vocalist. Bruce emerged as Cream's dominant creative force, writing most of their material and becoming the focal point of their sound. This shift in dynamics allegedly frustrated Clapton, who felt overshadowed by Bruce's contributions. Sources suggest Clapton resented Bruce receiving the majority of credit for the band's artistic achievements. The bassist's sophisticated jazz-influenced approach to music reportedly struck Clapton as overly complicated and pretentious, moving away from the straightforward blues foundation he preferred. When Cream dissolved, accounts indicate that Clapton blamed Bruce for the internal conflict that destroyed what many considered the greatest power trio in rock history. This bitterness apparently persisted for many years after the band's end. Clapton's competitive feelings extended to other British rock guitarists of his era, particularly Pete Townshend of The Who. While Townshend developed his own distinctive style, characterized by aggressive power chords and his famous windmill strumming technique, sources suggest Clapton viewed this approach as more showmanship than substance. The Who's massive popularity and Townsend's guitar-smashing antics allegedly irritated Clapton, who reportedly saw these theatrical elements as compensation for inferior technical ability. According to some accounts, Clapton dismissed Townsend's playing as primitive and his compositions as overrated. At industry events and award ceremonies, witnesses recalled Clapton making disparaging comments about The Who's ambitious rock operas and concept albums, viewing them as excessive and self-indulgent rather than musically significant. Perhaps most complicated was Clapton's relationship with George Harrison of the Beatles. The two men maintained a close friendship for years, yet sources suggest an undercurrent of professional jealousy ran through their connection. Harrison's position as a Beatle gave him worldwide fame that Clapton could never quite match, despite his superior technical guitar abilities. According to various accounts, Clapton privately expressed the view that Harrison received adulation simply for his Beatles association, rather than for his actual guitar playing, which Clapton considered adequate but unexceptional. This professional rivalry became entangled with personal betrayal when Clapton fell in love with Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd. He wrote the famous song Layla about his obsessive feelings for her, and eventually, after years of pursuit, Boyd left Harrison for Clapton. Some insiders have suggested that Clapton's attraction to Boyd was intensified by jealousy of Harrison's seemingly perfect life and legendary status, making the situation about more than simple romantic love. As the music industry evolved through the 1980s, new rivalries emerged. Phil Collins transitioned from his role as drummer for Genesis to become one of the decade's biggest pop stars. Sources claim Clapton viewed this transformation with contempt, seeing Collins as abandoning musical integrity for commercial success. Collins's synth-heavy production style and accessible pop sound allegedly struck Clapton as representing everything wrong with modern music. According to accounts, Clapton made cutting remarks about Collins at charity events and in conversations with other musicians, dismissing his work as mediocre material that succeeded only because audiences had poor taste. The disrespect was reportedly obvious to others in attendance at various industry gatherings. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits presented another source of tension. Knopfler's innovative fingerstyle guitar technique, which eschewed traditional pick usage, brought him critical acclaim and commercial success throughout the 1980s. Sources suggest Clapton struggled to accept Knopfler's rise to guitar hero status using such an unconventional approach. Allegedly, Clapton characterized the finger-picking style as a gimmick that actually limited Knopfler's capabilities rather than enhanced them. According to some accounts, Clapton dismissed Knopfler's tone as weak compared to traditional blues guitarists, and refused to acknowledge his influence on guitar playing. When journalists drew comparisons between the two musicians, Clapton reportedly responded with dismissive comments.
The emergence of Stevie Ray Vaughan in the early 1980s presented perhaps the most direct challenge to Clapton's status as the preeminent blues guitarist. Vaughan burst onto the scene with explosive playing that combined technical virtuosity with raw emotional power. Critics began calling Vaughan the greatest blues guitarist alive, a title Clapton had long held. According to sources, this shift in recognition deeply bothered Clapton. He allegedly attended Vaughan's performances and afterward made harsh critical assessments, suggesting Vaughan was merely playing louder versions of techniques borrowed from Jimi Hendrix and Albert King. Some accounts indicate Clapton claimed Vaughan's playing emphasized flash and volume over genuine emotional depth and subtlety. The suggestion that Vaughan might be stealing his crown as the blues guitar master reportedly consumed Clapton with jealousy that was obvious to those around him. Prince represented a different kind of challenge to Clapton's worldview. As a multi-instrumentalist and pop phenomenon, Prince also earned recognition for his exceptional guitar abilities. Sources suggest Clapton struggled to accept that someone he viewed as primarily a pop entertainer could be considered among the greatest guitarists. According to accounts, Clapton characterized Prince's playing as technically flashy but lacking in blues authenticity and soul. He allegedly dismissed Prince's guitar reputation as inflated by his pop stardom and mysterious public persona rather than reflecting genuine mastery of the instrument. When guitar polls and magazine rankings placed Prince above Clapton or even on the same level, sources claim he became visibly upset and refused to participate in publications that highlighted Prince's guitar work. The rivalry that looms largest in discussions of Clapton's competitive nature involves Jimi Hendrix. When Hendrix arrived in London in 1966, he revolutionized guitar playing with his innovative techniques and theatrical performance style. According to famous stories, Clapton attended early Hendrix performances and felt completely overshadowed by what he witnessed. One account suggests Clapton walked out of a concert saying he should quit playing guitar entirely. Throughout his career, Clapton was constantly asked about Hendrix in interviews, forcing repeated comparisons that allegedly haunted him. Some sources claim he made dismissive comments about Hendrix's technique being sloppy and undisciplined, though publicly he had to acknowledge Hendrix's immense talent and influence. The shadow of Hendrix's brief but incandescent career seemingly followed Clapton throughout his own much longer musical journey. Returning to the personal realm, the situation with Pattie Boyd represents the culmination of how professional jealousy and personal desire intertwined in Clapton's life. The love triangle between Clapton, Harrison, and Boyd created one of rock music's most infamous scandals. Clapton's pursuit of his best friend's wife, while maintaining their friendship, struck many as a profound betrayal. Sources have suggested that his obsession with Boyd stemmed partly from jealousy of Harrison's life and Beatles' legacy rather than purely from romantic love. The affair and eventual marriage to Boyd destroyed the friendship between Clapton and Harrison for years, though they eventually reconciled to some degree. This situation demonstrates how the tensions that marked Clapton's professional relationships could spill over into his personal life with devastating consequences. These various conflicts and rivalries reveal the complexity behind Eric Clapton's public image. While his musical contributions remain undeniable and his influence on rock and blues guitar cannot be overstated, the personal dynamics of his career paint a picture of an artist driven by both creative passion and competitive insecurity. The tensions with fellow musicians from Baker and Bruce through Hendrix and Vaughan suggest someone who struggled to share the spotlight and felt threatened when other guitarists received recognition he believed should be his alone. Whether these rivalries stemmed from justified artistic disagreements or simple jealousy remains a matter of debate among music historians and fans. What seems clear is that Clapton's journey through rock history was marked not just by musical evolution, but by complicated, often difficult relationships with the very musicians who shared his era and, in some cases, his stages. These conflicts became part of rock and roll folklore, adding another dimension to understanding one of the genre's most celebrated and controversial figures.